Hello there and welcome to Elke Art. My name is Mrs. Elke and today I'm going to be doing a hot air balloon that seems to be glowing at night. So here's an example. Now I made mine rather small, but you could definitely do it larger and really start planning, thinking, imagining what kind of fun design you could do on your hot air balloon. Hot air balloons have so many different fun designs on them. So this is just the one that I decided to pick, but I definitely wanted to have kind of this glowing vibe. So if you would like to do that too, please follow along with me and see how you as well can create a fun glowing hot air balloon. All right, if you're enjoying these videos, make sure to hit that like button down below and subscribe to my channel, Elke Art. Thanks so much for watching. For this project, I am using a piece of watercolor paper. This is Master's Touch, 140 pound. I'm using a Sharpie, watercolor paints, and some tape. Now the tape is not only going to be used to tape my paper down, but I'm also going to use the circle part of the tape to help get the top part of my balloon. So I'm just going to use my Sharpie to trace the top part of the tape. Now if you're using a larger piece of paper, you may want to find like a plate or a larger size circle to use. Now I'm going to go down below and add kind of a horizontal line for the bottom part of the balloon, and then I'm going to connect with more of a diagonal line the circle to my horizontal line to make it look like a hot air balloon. I'm also going to add kind of this trapezoid shape below that line too to make it look like the balloon kind of comes in at the bottom. Then I'm going to make a square or a rectangle that kind of is floating underneath the balloon. This will be the basket. And then I am going to make the lines on the balloon, starting with a vertical line right down the middle. And then on the left, I will make lines that kind of curve out to the left. And you can do as many or as few as you would like. I'm just adding 2 on each side. And then on the right, I'm going to add lines that curve to the right. So 1 and 2. I also need some lines to connect my basket to my balloon, and I'm going to go ahead and put 4, so 2 on the outside and then 2 on the inside to make it look like the back ones. And then I'm going to add horizontal and vertical lines to my basket to make it look like a basket. Now on the balloon, you can do whatever kind of design you would like. You could do zigzags, you could do stripes, you could just leave it like this and make each of those a different color. I'm going to make slightly curved lines that kind of go up as if they were stairs. So I'll start one on the left and then I'll go a little bit higher on the next one, a little bit higher on the next one, and so on. So it almost looks like stairs going up my hot air balloon. I'm making them slightly curved because that makes each of the bumps of the balloon look like it's a little bit more rounded. It prevents my balloon from looking flat like a pancake. I'm going to go ahead and do that all the way down my balloon, and you could do even more of these in between. I'm keeping mine pretty far apart, and then I will play around with some different colors on my balloon. All right, I'm thinking I am liking that design. Now I'm going to go ahead and start painting with my watercolors. I went ahead and taped my paper down all the way around just so it wouldn't move on me. And now I am starting in with some yellow. Now I have sped up my video so that it kind of keeps on moving along, so feel free to pause me if I'm going too fast. I'm starting off with yellow on my balloon, regardless of the color that I will end up painting it at the end. This is what kind of gives our balloon this like glow-like feel. So I'm painting my entire balloon yellow first to give it that glow. Next, I'm going to go into brown, and I'm going to put some brown on the basket of the balloon and let that dry. Now with watercolor, I can't paint something next to something that's wet without it bleeding. So I'm going to be jumping around a little bit, or I may have to just let things dry. On the bottom here, I want to have kind of some grass that's kind of glowing almost. It'll help kind of unify my picture. Now I went ahead and dried the balloon, and now I'm adding in the background sky. For the background sky, I'm getting my watercolor paper wet first, and then I'm dropping in some blue. Now I want this to be a night sky, so I'm going really, really dark. You could make yours more of a daytime sky and leave it regular, or you could even do a sunset sky if you'd like. I want to get mine very, very dark, and I want it to be really, really dark on the top, but then get lighter as it gets farther down. So as I paint farther down my picture here, I'm trying to make it so that the watercolor is not quite as dark. I am going to go close to my grass, but I'm not going to touch my grass because it still might be wet from when I painted it. I am going to go around my balloon, and don't forget to go in between the basket and the balloon. While it's wet, I can add even more color to the top. So I'm going to keep on adding more and more paint. I want to go in with darker blue, and I'm even adding a little bit of purple too, because that can make my sky look a little bit darker. I personally am avoiding black. I don't like to use black too much on my paintings because it can be so dull. You could mix your blue with a little bit of black, or you could mix your purple with a little bit of black to darken it. But I think just to keep mine nice and bright and colorful, I'm going to avoid black and just use blue and purple for the darkest darks of my sky. Notice I just keep adding color to the very top of my balloon and all the way out to the edges of my page. I'm going to be very careful as I paint next to my balloon because I don't want the blue color to go on my balloon at this point. All right, I went ahead and let that dry a little bit, and now I'm going to go ahead and start doing the design of my balloon. I'm starting in the middle where it's kind of safe because it's not touching the sky around it. So if your sky is really wet, it's good to start at the middle of your balloon and then work out towards the outside edges, and hopefully by then your sky will be dry. I've decided to kind of go with a warm color scheme on my balloon just to kind of help it look like it's shining even more, but don't be afraid to do any colors that you would like. I'm going to go with orange every other step here, and then I think I'm going to fill in between them with red. So again, just a warm color palette, yellow, oranges, and reds. Now I'm filling the reds in, and that way if they do kind of bleed into one another, it won't matter too much because they're very similar. As you can see, I've switched to a round brush that has a point because then it's easier for me to get some of these smaller corners as I'm painting. Keep it nice and clean. I'm not using a ton of water because I just want nice, rich, vibrant color. So I have just a little bit of water and I'm using a little bit more paint. The paint I am using is Holbein watercolor. I order it in tubes and then I squirt it onto this palette, and then that's how I use my watercolor paint. But any watercolor would work. Now that I have all of my reds and oranges done, I'm just going to intensify some of the yellows in between. I think I'm going to leave my original yellow on some of them and then have like a darker variation of yellow in between them. I'm using a lot of paint and a little bit of water so that my paint is not mixing too much or bleeding too much. It's kind of staying put. Now I want to work a little bit on the ground. I'm going to start off by adding kind of these mountain hill type things at the bottom of my sky. And then I want to do something called negative painting with my grass. I've taken some blue and brown mixed, and I'm pointing my brush down and just going up and down to try to make it look like the grass. So this is called negative painting because I'm basically painting around the shape of the grass. And I like doing this to kind of make it look like there's different things growing. It also makes the top part of that area look like it has a little bit more greenery or trees, distant grasses growing as well. So if I want to cut the grass, I just go a little bit lower. My grass was looking a little bit tall compared to the rest of my scene, so I'm trying to make it go down just a little bit more. And then I also want to tone the grass down so it's not so bright. So I'm just using some brown, and I'm just gonna kind of add these little brush strokes on the tip of my brush to kind of tone down the grass a little bit so it's not quite so yellowy. Maybe has a little bit of brown or even a little bit of blue or gray mixed in. Now I want to add a little bit more detail to the ground, so I thought it would be nice to add some trees. To do the trees, I'm using the darkest color I could mix. It's actually blue and brown. If you want to, you could add a little bit of green in there. And I start with the vertical line and then just fill it out by kind of dabbing my brush down. Remember that with pine trees, at least, they are usually kind of triangular, meaning the top is a lot skinnier than the base. So make sure that if you're doing pine trees, that your pine trees get wider as they get farther down. And I'm keeping them pretty simple, not anything too fancy, just to add a little bit of interest down below my hot air balloon. All right, the last thing is adding some stars in the sky. I'm using an acrylic paint marker, and I'm just gonna add some dots. You could also do this with acrylic paint. Watercolor paint, yellow won't show up very well on blue, so you may have to use something else. But I just wanted to have a little bit of sparkle in the sky. I thought that would be kind of nice. So by using these just little dots of acrylic, they kind of show up as like the little stars for the hot air balloon. All right, I'm liking how that's looking. The last step is to peel the tape off. Remember, when you're taking tape off of your painting, to pull it away from your painting so that you don't rip the painting. I've had many students do that, and then they get so sad because they've ripped into their finished work. So make sure you pull that tape away. I usually do it like at a 90-degree angle from my picture. Then I have this nice crisp border that goes around my painting. Thank you so much for joining me today, making this nice glowing hot air balloon. And I hope you come back to visit me at Elke Art for more fun art tutorials. Have a good one.